through the agenda for today. We will go through the introduction of the session. We will then provide a demo of the return process and summarize the key takeaways from the session. At the end, there will be a short Q&A session. This feature will be available in the end of the session, and the questions will be limited to corporate tax return process. With this, I hand over to my colleague, Ms. Roda Al-Mheri, to walk you through the webinar.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you, Hissa, for taking us through the agenda of today. We will start first with the introduction of the session. As you may know, this session has been designed to walk you through the corporate tax return requirements of the taxable person through Tax portal. And a tax return must be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person, which includes tax agent or a legal representative and also the parent company of the tax group. Kindly note that the tax return must be completed and filed online through Tax within 9 months of the end of the tax period. And if the currency other than UAE dirhams is used for accounting purposes, amounts should be converted to dirhams, UAE dirhams, using the exchange rate set by the central bank. And in the following order: spot rate, average monthly exchange rate, average annual exchange rate. The tax return that we will go through in few minutes are through 9 main steps or parts, which will allow you to report your taxable income, including any relevant adjustments such as exemptions and reliefs claimed. As mentioned by Hissa, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar to answer any questions related and limited to corporate tax return only. And also you can add your questions in the meantime to the Q&A box only and refrain from utilizing the chat box for questions. We would like to highlight an important note about the Ministry of Finance and Federal Tax Authority that launched the initiative to waive the late registration penalties under the corporate tax law. This initiative should be applicable to corporate taxpayer and certain exempt persons required to register with the Federal Tax Authority. They should submit the tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of the first tax period, where full compliance with the provisions of the corporate tax law applies. Now let's move to the key points to take into consideration before filing that we would like to highlight before we start the demonstration of how to file step by step in Tax. Starting with the taxpayer's details. Kindly do not file your return if the following is incorrect, either your entity type or tax period. For the entity type, as an example, you are registered as a natural person instead of a juridical person. You will need to go back to Tax and apply to change your entity type or tax period first if needed, and only complete filing your return once the FTE has updated the entity type or tax period. Moving to the small business relief, as we get a lot of questions on the small business relief as well. So please note, if taxpayers with revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams qualify to claim the small business relief, where the corporate tax return should be simplified when elected for the small business relief, and the steps will be less when applying in Tax portal. where no corporate tax is payable, where the small business relief is elective, and you do not need to attach your financial statement but must be able to prove your revenue when requested by the FTA. And kindly refer to the corporate tax guide on the small business relief for more details and guidance. Let's move to the elections. Where certain elections are irrevocable, you need to pay careful consideration to the current and future tax consequences of each election before you make a decision and elect for any of the elections. The irrevocable elections are realization basis, transactional rules, and transfers within a qualifying group. Moving to the financial statements and accounting methods, kindly note that all taxpayers, excluding the small business reliefs, need to attach their financial statements to the corporate tax return. Where taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period can use the cash basis of accounting. However, the taxpayers with revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period will be required to prepare their financial statements in terms of the IFRS standards or IFRS for SMEs where applicable. Also, financial statements must be signed and stamped before attaching it to the tax return. Taxpayers also need to consider whether they should engage an accountant with an appropriate experience to assist them with the preparation of the financial statement. Moving to nil returns. If you earned no revenue during the tax period, you can elect for the small business relief. Please pay careful attention to this section as we get a lot of questions and concerns about nil returns. If you earned no revenue during the tax period, you can elect the small business relief, in which case the return would be simplified. But either ways, you will need to apply for the corporate tax return. And if you do not elect for the small business relief, you need to complete the normal corporate tax return where amounts are nil. You need to populate nil in the relevant fields. Moving to the free zone, please note that not all free zone companies are qualifying free zone persons. So qualifying free zone persons are taxed at a rate of 0% on their qualifying income only. Please refer to the corporate tax law, the corporate tax guide on free zone persons, and the ministerial in addition to the cabinet decision for more information. Also, you can check the qualifying free zone persons that may elect to subject to the normal corporate tax regime. With this, we will start now the corporate tax return demonstration. Starting by logging in into Tax portal, entering your credentials such as the email ID, the password, and the security code showing on your screens. You will proceed by selecting the taxable person you would like to proceed with, and you will click on View to open your dashboard. You will click View All where it says Corporate Tax Filings to start your corporate tax filing, you will proceed by checking into your period form and period from and period to as per the application number, and you will go where it says action and you'll click on file to start your corporate tax return for the selected period after confirming it. As we've mentioned earlier, you need to check that your corporate tax period is correct before proceeding with your return. You will have the first page where you will go through the guide instructions and guidelines, and you will click on the checkbox before proceeding with the application. So once you click on start, you will have the corporate tax return tile where it has been divided into 8 sections, where we will go through one by one in few minutes, and you are requested to ensure that the document submitted supports the information entered by you in the corporate tax return, and all documents and details are up to date. Starting with this section where it will be displayed to you in all steps and during all the steps of the corporate tax return, where you need to ensure that your the correct corporate tax return period and corporate tax return due date along with the corporate tax year end is correct. You will proceed by entering the taxpayer details for the first step, where this section should be pre-populated with your details from your registration application, but kindly note that it's important that you select the correct type of the during the return filing, where the taxpayer realize where the legal type is incorrect. You need to be advise that you will apply for an amendment before proceeding with your return. You will proceed by adding your address details, where it should be pre-populated as well from your registration application, and you will answer the question either with yes or no, where it says is the above information is correct. If not, you will click on no and you will go back and apply for an amendment first, and once it gets approved, you will come back to the return application and proceed with it. You can update the taxable person information if applicable in this section, and you will continue by updating the unincorporated partnership details. You will proceed with updating as well the business activity, and you can complete the free zone details by answering the question carefully if you wish to proceed as a qualifying free zone person. So an important note to note here that you need to answer the questions carefully before applying or considering if you are a qualifying free zone person or not, where the steps should increase if you will choose to be a qualifying free zone person, and if not, it will be 8 main steps. And if you elect for the small business relief, it will be as well in less step. So let's assume in this demo we're applying as a qualifying free zone person, and we will click on next step. So as you may view the tile at the top, at the beginning we had 8 main steps, and now as we chose the qualifying free zone person, we have 9 main steps where the free zone details step and the second step has been added. So you will start by updating the revenue schedule of the free zone, and you will move by completing the and updating the revenue schedule, where you will find the total revenue for the de minimis requirements auto calculated to you. You will proceed by updating the non-qualifying revenue, and the total non-qualifying revenue should be auto calculated as well. You will move by updating the de minimis calculation details and the qualifying revenue where applicable. You can update the substance for free zone details if applicable, And you will proceed by updating the free zone confirmation details where applicable and the additional information for each emirate before proceeding to the next step. You may add an additional information as well if applicable as an optional and proceed to the next step. An important step, which is the third step of the elections that we get a lot of questions on. For the elections section, it will allow you to make the election relevant to you, where you need to know in this page that there are some irrevocable elections that must be done in the first tax return, where taxpayer will not be able to change it in the future returns. So you should ensure that you understand the future consequences of each election you will make in this step. So let's start with the election of the realization basis, where you may apply to it here. And you need to note that it's important when uploading your financial statements, it should be signed and stamped before attaching it either in PDF or document format. You will proceed by adding the making election in this section for the transactional rules, and an important note as well for the small business relief. We would like to highlight that in this section you can make an election to apply for the small business relief, where you are entitled to this relief if your revenue is 3 million dirhams or less. If you're entitled for the small business relief, you should answer either with yes or no to the question which says, is the taxable person a member of multinational enterprises group? So in this question specifically, you will need to answer either with yes or no to be electing the small business relief, where the total revenue, again, if your total revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams, you may elect for the small business relief by answering this question, in which case the tax return should be simplified to you with 2 to 3 pages long. So let's move now to the transfers within a qualifying group. You can make the election in this step and proceed to the business restructuring transactions and move to the foreign permanent establishment income by answering the questions carefully. And after completing all the mandatory fields, you'll click on next step. Next step should be the accounting schedule, where this section has been divided into 3 parts to you, starting with the statement of profit or loss, comprehensive income, and statement of financial position. We would like to highlight before we start this step that all numeric values should be entered as positive, where the system will read if positive or negative amendments are required. You can update the operating revenue details by starting with the statement of profit or loss, where you will find the gross profit or loss auto-calculated to you. You will proceed by updating the interest and expense income details. As we've mentioned, all numeric values and all fields should be entered as positive, and the net interest expense or income would be auto-calculated for your review. You will proceed for the same when updating the losses and gains on disposable of assets, and you will have it auto-calculated to you as well. You will proceed by updating the exchange gains losses details if applicable, and it should be auto-calculated to you as well. You will move by updating the expense of other income, where you will have the expense net of other income auto-calculated to you. You will have the net profit or loss grayed out and auto-calculated based on all the details you've entered above under the profit or loss section. You can update in this section the statement of other comprehensive income if it's applicable to you, and you will proceed by reviewing the total comprehensive income for the year, which should be auto-calculated and grayed out. You can update the assets details in this section where it says the statements of financial position, and you will move by adding the non-current assets where you will find the total non-current assets and, and total assets auto-calculated for your reference. You will move to the liabilities by adding your liability, and you will find the total liability auto-calculated as well. You will proceed by updating the equity details, and you will find the total equity auto-calculated to you. You may review the final total equity and liability, which are based on the details you've entered in the above section, and you will enter the total number of employees and then proceed to the audit section where you can update the details by answering the question either by yes or no, and based on your answer you will need to complete all the required fields, and you may click on add shareholder to add the shareholders details as well. And after completing all these steps in this section, you will proceed to the next step. Fifth step should be the accounting adjustments and exempt income. As you may know, this section will allow you to update your accounting income for adjustments such as provision adjustments, realization basis, and you can update the exempt income as well. And we would like to highlight here that once you attach any financial statements, it should be signed and stamped before attaching. So let's start first with the accounting income, where you will enter the details of the same in this section, and you will proceed by continuing the updates of the accounting income by answering the questions carefully, and then you will move by scrolling down and answering all the mandatory fields and adding all the numeric values that should be added. You will move to the realization basis adjustments where you will answer the questions carefully and add all the required fields, and you will scroll down by continuing with updating the adjustments details. And next you will update the transactional adjustments by either answering the question with yes or no, and you will continue with updating by scrolling down and completing all the mandatory fields. You will proceed with updating the exempt income as well. You will need to make sure that you answer the questions carefully, and you will continue with updating the same for the exempt income if needed. You will move to the foreign permanent establishment where you will add the details, and you will proceed to the next step. Sixth step is the relief, where this section will allow you to include the adjustment which are arising from the reliefs claimed, including transfers within qualifying group or business restructuring relief where applicable. And as we've mentioned, all numeric values should be entered in this section as positive where the system will read where positive or negative adjustments needed. You can update the details first of the relief by updating the transfers within a qualifying group, and you will proceed by adding the description for the relief relating to transfers within qualifying group and adding all the numeric values in positive. Then you will update the details of the relief related to business restructuring relief in this section by answering the question carefully, either by yes or no, and you will continue with updating the details to complete all the requirements of the same. You will proceed to the next step, which should be the other adjustment step, where you can make the adjustments for non-deductible expenditure, adjustment for interest income or expenditure, transaction with related parties and connected persons if applicable, along with the adjustments derived from a qualifying investment fund and any other adjustment. As we've mentioned, all numeric values should be entered as positive, where the system will determine where positive or negative adjustments will apply in the tax calculation depending on the field. So you will enter first the details related to the adjustments for non-deductible expenditure, and you will proceed to adding the description for the same. You will move to the adjustments for interest, income, or expenditure. You will need to answer the question carefully, either by yes or no. And based on your question, if yes, you will need to enter the interest capping schedule. So let's assume we've clicked on yes and we've entered the interest of capping schedule. You will have this pop-up page where you will need to enter the details of the capping schedule, and you will find the non-deductible net interest expenditure brought forward auto-calculated for your reference. You may cancel and go back to the main step or save and go back. So let's save and go back to the main step where you will move forward with entering the adjustments for interest, income, or expenditure, and you will proceed to the transactions with related parties and connected persons, where as mentioned, if you clicked the or answered the question with no, you won't need to do this step. But if you clicked on yes, you will need to click on related party transactions schedule, and you will have this pop-up page where you will click on add new item to add the gross income received from the related parties, and you will complete all the required fields. Then you'll click on add. Once you click on add, you may view the details you have entered here for your review, and you will move to the second sentence of the tile where highlighted now on the screen, where it says expenditure paid to related parties. You will click on add new item to add the same, and you will enter the expenditure paid to related parties details, and after completing all the mandatory fields you will click on add, and you will go back where you can view and review the details that you have entered here. You may check as well the summary table. Once you click on it, you won't be able to make any amendments to this section. You may view it only and click on save and go back to the main step. So let's proceed to the main step by adding the additions as a result of adjustments to transactions which were not at arm's length, which should be auto-calculated to you and for your review, depending on the numeric values. You will proceed by adding the connected persons schedule. You'll click on this box and you will add the same by adding new item and proceeding with the all required fields and clicking on add and uh, saving and going back to the main step. So let's proceed with the transactions with related parties and connected persons, where you will update the same in this section, and you will proceed to the adjustments for income and expenditure derived from a qualifying investment fund by entering all the numeric values, and you will enter any other adjustments where applicable and proceed to the next step. Each step should be the tax liability and tax credits, where this section will display your final tax liability. You may check and review the taxable income details that should be auto-calculated as a result of the schedule you've provided. You will proceed to the tax losses, where you can update it in this section by either answering with yes or no to the question and entering on the blue box to proceed to the tax losses schedule. You cannot make any amendments in the first page of the tax losses schedule. It should be grayed out for you. You will proceed to the second title of the tile, where you will click on the tax losses claimed from other taxable person. And once you click on it, you will have this pop-up page where you will click on add new item, where you will need to add the details of the tax losses claimed from other taxable person, and click on add, where you can view and review the details you have entered here, and go to the third title of the tile, where it says the tax losses transferred to other taxable persons, and you will click on add new item as well, and you will complete all the mandatory fields and click on add, and go back to the main step by saving and going back. You will have the step of the tax losses details, which should be pre-populated and gray out for your review. You will proceed with the tax calculation and tax credit as well for your review, as it will be gray out. And you will proceed to the tax credit schedule, where you can click on it and add the new item, where you will need to enter all the mandatory fields and click on add, and go back to the main step. So you can review the details added here and click on save and go back. You will proceed by reviewing the tax calculations and tax credits, which should be pre-populated to you. You will proceed with updating the estimated or provisional figures included in the corporate tax return by answering the question carefully and uploading the documents as an additional attachment where applicable. After completing all the mandatory fields, you will click on next step and click on save and proceed. So the ninth step should be the reviewing and declaring all the given information section, where it will highlight all the details entered by you. You will have a final review before clicking on the checkbox at the end of the page, that after carefully reviewing all the information you've entered, you confirm and you declare that the attached all the attached and all the information are correct. You will click on submit and yes, and with this your corporate tax return has been submitted successfully, and the reference number should be generated for you to once you submit your corporate tax return, where you can use it for future communication with the FTA. So you can check the status of the corporate tax return based on the application number once the corporate tax return has been submitted in this section, and you can review it here. With this, we've completed all steps for the corporate tax return in Emira Tax portal, and now we will proceed with the payment process demonstration. For the corporate tax payment process, you will log in to your profile and you will click on corporate tax. Next, you will have my payments, where highlighted in the second step. You will click on my payments and you will have this step which shows your outstanding payment. You may click on select and pay, or either pay all. If you click on select and pay, it means that you'll pay a partial amount of the full amount. So in this section, you can find your return liability here and enter the amount you would like to pay, and you will click on proceed to payment. Once you click on proceed to payment, you will have two methods of payment, either GI-ban or card payment. So you will choose your preferred payment methods and click on yes to confirm the payment. You will enter your payments and card details, and then you will click on pay. With this, you may download a PDF copy of the acknowledgement screen, or go back to the dashboard to check the taxable person profile, where you will view the outstanding amount and the overdue amount of your payment. With this, we've reached the key takeaways of today's session, that we will highlight the main important information or requirements when applying for the corporate tax return that we've mentioned in the previous demo. So let's start first with the registration. You need to ensure that you are registered for corporate tax, and you need to update all required documents or information, which such as the entity type and other required data, to ensure it's correct within the tax period. And for the tax period, you need to make sure that the tax period, specifically the first tax period appearing in the registration information, is correct. Where I showed you in the beginning of the demo, the tile on the top where it shows all your tax period details. Moving to the financial statements and accounting methods, as you may know, you need to prepare and upload your financial statement along with the corporate tax return when your revenue are more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period. You will be required to prepare your accounts as per the IFRS or IFRS for SMEs. However, for the qualifying free zone persons and taxpayers with revenue of more than 50 million dirhams in the tax period, you need to get your financial statements audited. You need to consider as well if you need to engage an accountant with an appropriate experience. Moving to the auditors, and when do you need to engage an auditor? You need to engage an auditor who should do so before the year end to ensure that your auditor are appropriately involved in the year end activities, such as including but not limited to stock take and cash count. Moving to the record keeping, and what information do you need to keep? You need to make sure that you have all the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return and any applications or elections you would like to make, where these records must be retained as per the requirements of the corporate tax law. Moving to the small business relief, as we receive a lot of questions on this topic specifically, and are you eligible to elect for the small business relief? You need to know that taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams should consider if they are eligible for the small business relief election and determine if they wish to claim the relief or not. Where for the other elections, you need to check whether you are eligible to make other elections as part of your return filing, which includes the elections to record gains and losses on a realization basis, excluding income from foreign permanent establishment when determining taxable income, applying transactional rules, applying business restructuring relief, apply transfer within qualifying group relief, or be subject to a tax at the standard rates instead of the rates applicable to a qualifying free zone person. Moving to the tax residency status, you need to understand that your tax resident status and consider the impact of any applicable double taxation treaties on your resident status, where this is relevant for completing your corporate tax return. Moving to the exemptions, and the question is, am I eligible to file an application to be an exempt person? You need to know that certain exempt person will be required to file an application with the FTA within 60 days of the end of their tax period. However, for the additional support, you need to consider whether you need any additional support from specialists, as an example, tax agents or specialists, to help with preparing the corporate tax return by requesting a clarification or any other activities. Moving to the auditors, you need to know that the audited financial statements are required if you have revenue more than 50 million dirhams in the relevant tax period, you are a qualifying free zone person, where the auditor must be a registered auditor. For the related parties and connected person, the same person can be a related party and a connected person. If this is the case, you need to answer the question with yes, where we mentioned in the previous demo to both questions, whether you had any transactions with related parties or connected person. However, you will only need to complete the details of the transactions under one of these categories, not under both of them. Where all transactions with related parties and connected persons must be at arm's length. In this case, the taxable person needs to make the adjustment in its return to reflect the arm's length amount. For the record keeping, you need to ensure that you have all the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return, where these records must be retained for a period of 7 years from the end of the tax period. And if you are a tax resident of the UAE, you need to include your worldwide income in your return, not only the income from UAE sources. And finally, before we proceed to the Q&A session, last key takeaway will be the conditions to benefit from the initiative that was from the Ministry of Finance and Federal Tax Authority to waive the late registration penalties under the corporate tax law. We would like to encourage you to benefit from this initiative to waive your late registration penalties. And if you don't have any penalties, you may apply for the corporate tax return to avoid any future penalties. This initiative should be applicable to corporate taxpayers and certain exempt persons required to register with the Federal Tax Authority, where you will need to submit the tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of your first tax period. So it should be depending on your tax period. If your tax period is the Gregorian calendar year, you will need to submit it before July, where full compliance with provisions of the corporate tax law applies. And with this, I'll hand over back to my colleague Hissa.
Thank you, Rhoda, for providing clear instructions on how to apply for corporate tax return. Before moving to the Q&A session, please follow us on our social media channels to stay updated on upcoming workshops and access our services. And now we will leave the QR code of the survey on the screen. Your participation is greatly appreciated to learn more about your experience in today's session. Please choose Corporate Tax Journey in question 5, and the survey link will be provided in the chat box. First question is, in 2024, a natural person started a new business through an LLC where he owns 100% of the capital, single owner LLC. Who should register?
Thank you, Hissa, for the question. The LLC is a taxable person who is a juridical person and have a separate legal personality from its owner. Then it should register for the corporate tax purposes.
Second question, can I file one CT return for all companies I own?
This is an important question as well. The answer is if the companies meet the requirement to form a tax group and their application to form a tax group is approved, they can file a single UAE corporate tax return covering all members of their group. Where companies cannot form a tax group, they will each be required to file a corporate tax return on a standalone basis.
Thank you. Can any company, natural person, elect for the small business relief, or will the FTA inform them whether they are eligible or not?
Thank you, Hissa. The question should the answer of the question of can any company or natural person elect for the small business relief or will the FTA inform you whether you are eligible or not The election for the small business relief is required to be made in the tax return for the relevant period. No application or intimation is required to or from the FTA as long as your revenue does not exceed 3 million dirhams. In case you elect for the small business relief, your return can use the cash basis of accounting and no need to have a financial statement, but you must have a proof of revenue.
Moving to the next question. Will a free zone entity be required to register and file a CT return?
Yes, as we've mentioned previously in the demo, all free zone entities will be required to register and file a corporate tax return, irrespective of whether they are a qualifying free zone person or not.
What about the time limit to file a tax return?
As we've mentioned before, the time limit for the tax return is it as a natural person, that is a taxable person, they must file their corporate tax return with the FTA no later than 9 months from the end of the relevant tax period, where natural persons should submit a single tax return for all their businesses and business activities subject to corporate tax.
Who should submit the corporate tax return?
The tax return must be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do on behalf of the taxable person, such as a tax agent or legal representative, and the parent company of the tax group is required to file the tax return on behalf of her group.
Thank you, Roda. Can I correct my return and how?
This is an important question as well. Yes, you can correct your return, and if the correction is made before the due date, it should consider it as an amendment. If it's made after the due date, it must be submitted as a voluntary disclosure through Emira Tax, and that's why we would like to encourage you to benefit from the initiative and have a time to apply for your corporate tax return and avoid any penalties.
Do we need a financial statement if elect small business relief?
An important question as well that we're receiving a lot. Do you need a financial statement if you elect for the small business relief? Please note that the taxpayer who elect for the small business relief don't need a financial statement but must be able to prove revenue of the FTA request. And if you did not elect for the small business relief, a financial statement must be prepared in terms of IFRS or IFRS for SMEs, where all taxable persons with revenue more than 50 million dirhams and qualifying free zone persons, irrespective of their revenue, must have an audited financial statement where it should be signed and stamped before attaching it to your return.
Another question. My company did operate zero revenue. Do I need to file return for corporate tax?
An important question as well that you would like to pay attention to. If you have not earned any income in the tax period, you will still need to file your return. You can elect the small business relief and you will have a simplified return, or if you don't want to elect for the small business relief, you will need to complete the normal corporate tax return. Where amounts are nil, you will need to populate nil in the relevant fields.
Thank you. Do profit and loss and balance sheet statements need to be generated from an accounting software, stamped and signed if the company is a non-qualifying free zone LLC with no revenues but expenses only?
Thank you, Hissa. The profit and loss and balance sheet need to be signed and stamped and attached to the corporate tax return, where the amounts input in the tax return must match the amounts as per the financial statement. However, given that the company has no revenue, it may elect its return for the small business relief, in which case no tax is payable and financial statement need to be attached in the return.
Our sister company has no business and no transactions. Its trade license expired and not renewed. And now we are under process of trade license cancellation. Can I process the deregistration of corporate tax now or after the completion of trade license cancellation?
The company needs to apply for deregistration within 3 months from the cessation of business or business activities, where you will need to attach the trade license cancellation to the deregistration application.
Thank you. Last question. All financial statements need to be signed and stamped if the revenue is over 3 million dirhams. Is it imperative to get it audited by auditors? And if so, is it mandatory for them to be in the register of the auditors in the UAE?
Thank you, Hissa, for the question. The answer is only taxable persons with revenue above 50 million dirhams need audited financial statements. However, if the company is a qualifying free zone person, it also needs an audited financial statement irrespective of the revenue amount, where the auditor must be a registered auditor.
Thank you, Rhoda, for your time and for providing clear answers to the questions. And now we are reaching the end of this session. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's workshop. Please visit our official website and follow our social media to stay updated on our events and activities related to corporate tax. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely day.